Welcome to Trails and Tales of Georgia Barbecue, a series of many documentaries on the history and people who show how Georgia barbecue is an integral part of the state's culture and traditions. In this episode, we visit Vanna Country Barbecue, located in the unincorporated town of Vanna, just outside Royston in northeast Georgia. The area has a rich history. One prominent example is the story of Nancy Hart and her exploits during the Revolutionary War. Hart became famous for her efforts supporting the Patriots in their fight against the British. Tradition holds that she was an effective spy and even took part in the Battle of Kettle Creek in 1779. She is also credited with capturing 6 British soldiers. As a woman, she took on tasks that were considered only for men, which was very unusual for the time period. Ever since, Nancy Hart has inspired generations of Georgia women who carried on this tradition for bucking patriarchal trends. Businesswoman and barbecue pitmaster Jenica Gilmore Maxwell of Vanna Country Barbecue is a prime example of this continued tradition. Though the traditionally male-dominated world of barbecue is steadily, if sometimes subtly, changing, Vanna Country Barbecue remains unique in that its owner and pitmaster is a woman, one of just a few women pitmasters in Georgia. Jenica Gilmore Maxwell grew up in Dewey Rose, just a few miles from the town of Vanna. As a young child, she dreamed of owning her own restaurant, but she got her start in the world of barbecue, not to fulfill those dreams, but rather, as a young teen, to simply buy a pair of high-heel shoes.
I wanted shoes. I wanted high heels. I had an obsession with high heels. And being one of 8 children, that was not something my parents could afford to spend a lot of money on as shoes. Like when you saw, and it's funny because when you saw me as a child, I never had shoes on. I was always barefoot. We grew up on a farm, always running around barefoot. But it got to a point where I was like, I want high heels. I want shoes. So my mom was like, okay, well, you can get a job and you can start buying your own stuff. We went to church over at Pleasant Grove where we met Bobby McGarity, who was the brother of Johnny McGarity that is the original owner. And he was like, well, let me talk to my brother, let me see if he'll let her work up there, being that she is underage. And so they were like, yeah, you can come up here and clean off tables and refill drinks. And I think that lasted about 3 weeks. And then I was waiting tables and running the register and talking to people at the window. And then helping, Lamar Brown was the pitmaster at the time. So I would help him out there do the chickens. And at that time, they did it over the charcoal in the big pit. So that was pretty interesting just to go out there and watch him do it, because he'd lay out all the chickens and then he'd, start the charcoal and stuff and then baste them and then he'd flip it. And it was just an interesting process to watch. And then they had the big old style, I don't know what you call it, it's like a potbelly smoker. And that's how they cook their hams and their butts and their ribs. And it was just an interesting process to watch them do it. So I was all the time out there helping them, bringing stuff in, just anything I could do to get out there and be part of the cooking process. And at that time we only had coleslaw, Brunswick stew, and baked beans. And I think they had just added the baked beans when I started, because it was strictly pork, chicken, ribs, stew, and slaw. 2010, I had my first daughter. Probably, I think it was about 2012 where I really got to where I was doing pretty much everything, helping with cooking, helping run everything. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm doing everything, so let me just go ahead and purchase it from you. It's my baby. I've been here for half my life. Let me go ahead and purchase it from you. So in 2016 in January was when I initially first purchased it.
Jenica learned how to do barbecue from the original owners of Vanna Country Barbecue, but she also put her own touches on what she serves. Her customers expect a quality product, and Jenica consistently delivers. And she sells a lot of barbecue. Jenica is very focused on using the best ingredients possible and believes that, when cooking for her customers, freshness is just better.
I don't like leftovers. So, I assume other people don't either. We have our microwave, we use it to melt cheese and, steam the buns. but I don't do heating, reheating stuff. If I do, I do it in the oven. My aunt and uncle run a farm down in Statesboro, and they have yard chickens, so I've been getting yard chickens eggs from them to use to help them out, because they're certified to sell organic eggs and vegetables, and they have this huge greenhouse, and they do take it to the farmer's market every week. If I don't use them, then I share them and spread them around, because I think they get like 80 eggs a day, so they don't even sell all of them, so try to help them out. On Thursdays, I put our hams on, and I cook them for about 8 hours, and then I wrap them. They cook for 10 hours, and then I wrap them. They cook for another 8 hours. Once I take those off, I put the brisket on, and then once I take all of that off, I put our ribs on, and then I wrap the ribs. I left these on so I can show y'all. I wrap the ribs in the foil, and they stay in the foil for about 2 hours. So just take them out of the foil, and they just kind of fall apart, and they're perfect.
Every local barbecue place in Georgia reflects the preferences and traditions of the local community. There's a sense of pride in how barbecue is prepared, and locals tend to remain loyal to those tastes, from the selection of the meat and the type of wood used to smoke it, to the sauces and sides that accompany it. And Jenica is committed to preserving the traditions of the area.
It's pretty similar as far as the ribs, the chicken, the hams, and the stew. We do all of that the same. At some point, I think it was like 2007 is when they got the Southern Pride cooker. That helped out a lot because we were cooking bigger quantities and a lot busier. And we added the mac and cheese, which is really good. It's one of everybody's favorites. We added mac and cheese, applesauce, side salads. We had salad at the time, but it wasn't like a big deal. It was just, romaine lettuce and cucumbers and tomatoes, and that was it. So that was one thing that I love salad. I eat a lot of salad, so I was like, okay, we're gonna make it better and actually taste good. So we start doing spring mix salad.
So your menu tends to reflect what the locals want.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We actually have two of our sandwiches. There's the Aubrey and the Matt. They're customers that come in here. So the Aubrey is basically a brisket club, but it's on a toasted bun, because they would come in here and they're like, hey, can you toast the bun for us? And they're like, yeah. And then they, be like, can you put lettuce, tomato, and bacon on it? And then the Matt is the same thing, but they're like, can you do it with rib meat? So we just, they're regular customers and they come in here all the time. Aubrey actually might come in here today. He usually is a regular every Friday at 1. And if he doesn't get here on Friday, I'm calling him on Saturday. Hey, are you okay?
And with the growing interest in food tourism, many travelers seek out these special places that offer a taste of the region's past through a barbecue they serve with classic Southern hospitality.
But yeah, we get a lot of people that'll come in and they say, we've been to every barbecue place in Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina. They tell us that that's their favorite thing. They love barbecue. We get a lot of people from Augusta, a lot from Athens. There's a couple that comes once a month from Atlanta, a couple that comes once a month from Greenville, and there's some couples that come from Anderson every weekend. And if they don't come, they know they're not coming the next weekend, they'll take stew or ribs home with them. And they actually came in last week, and I think they said they were traveling to Maryland, and they got a whole bunch of ribs and stew and took it up there. One of the funniest memories we actually had somebody was getting married. I think it was in Massachusetts, and we ended up shipping Brunswick stew up to them. The bride wanted the Brunswick stew at the wedding. So, it was like $200 with the dry ice, and they were like, we don't care. We want the stew up there.
People sometimes develop preconceived notions about who is qualified for certain jobs and professions. Race or gender often serve as the defining factor of who is suitable and who is not. Two stereotypes have long defined perceptions of barbecue pitmasters in Georgia and throughout the South, and neither of them included women. In this view, pitmasters were men, whether white or black, and true Q could only come from the work of those male hands. Even in today's world of barbecue, many people still expect to see a man tending the pit at their local barbecue place, But as Jenica and the deliberately all-female staff at Vanna Country Barbecue attest, times have changed and such stereotypes have become less prevalent. But old perceptions and the barriers they create sometimes still linger as well.
It is very centered towards men. It's very rare, that people are like, oh my gosh, it's a woman that's running. And I get that a lot, and it was so funny because this group of men came in one time and they were just going on and on about how good the food was. And I walked in and they were asking me who owned it, and they were like, who cooked the food? And I think they were like football players or something. And I told them, I was like, I cooked the food. And they're like, but you're a woman and you're white. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right, I see what you're saying. And it was just, they were like, oh, it was so good. They were like, we could not believe it. We thought it was some old big, bubba out there cooking the food. And just, sometimes it does get frustrating because people tend to doubt my abilities because I am a woman, and I've had a couple times, maybe once or twice, where I've gotten a little frustrated when I first owned it, and they'll be like, well, don't you have a man up there running this with you, or are you sure you can handle this by yourself, or don't you need this and that, just insinuating that I can't do it because I am a woman. And it's like, no, I've got it, I can do it. Plus I've got all these other women behind me that I couldn't do it without them. They're, my backbone, and they don't know how many times that they just keep my head straight. And they laugh at me because I'll start one project and I'll be doing something, and then a customer will come in and want to talk to me, and then I walk away and I come back and it's done. And I'm like, I love y'all, thank y'all so much. I couldn't do it without you.
In the past few years, the COVID pandemic, as well as the recent supply chain problems, have created havoc throughout the food industry. During COVID, over 90,000 restaurants closed, either temporarily or permanently. And most recently, supply chain issues have plagued almost 95% of all restaurants across the country. A significant number have closed as a result. So, how does a small local barbecue place in rural Georgia survive those crises?
Honestly, we did okay. Like we made it. We were only able to do drive-through and to-go orders. There's a little slit over there in that window where I was taking cards and taking orders at that window, and then we had a table out on the porch so we'd open the door and put the food out there. We actually had like 2 wrecks out here because of our drive-through line. Somebody ran into somebody and somebody backed into somebody else, and but the line always stayed so busy, so we'd have them pull around here and take their order at the window and then pick it up on the porch, and then the other line kept going around. So yeah, COVID, as far as our customers, I mean, they kept us going. Like we're like, we're here for you. We're, whatever y'all need, we're gonna keep coming and supporting you. We don't want you to go anywhere. As far as the food costs, it was crazy, but honestly, it's even more now. This year has been more of a struggle than 2020 because of gas prices and labor costs. And styrofoam was a big issue at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and it was, people were just giggling at us because we were packaging stuff in the most odd ways. Like we were like, we promise it's all in here, but it doesn't look normal. There was a lot of times where we couldn't find brisket, we couldn't get wings, there was a shortage on wings too. There was a little bit that we didn't have any brisket, and then for some reason it shot up to, I think we were paying almost $10 a pound for it. It was just ridiculous how much that it was going up, and I just didn't serve it for a while because I was like, I can't justify paying this and then asking my customers who are struggling just as hard as I am to pay $20 a pound or 15, or well, I charge, what is it, 16 a pound now, but it's just crazy.
One of the things that's most interesting about barbecue is that it draws people together. In the South, a barbecue is as much about coming together as it is simply eating a great meal. Having fellowship with your family, friends, or neighbors is the why, and the food merely the how. There's even a family connection to other barbecue places and pitmasters in the area. All are connected in some way or another. Although they're competing for customers, it remains a healthy family competition. That sense of family is a major part of Vanna Country Barbecue's success.
So the original owner, Mr. McGarity, he's related to the Osleys, who have Zeb's barbecue. Yeah, so our ribs are slightly similar to theirs, and then the stew is slightly similar to theirs because it's the same family. So the previous owner, Rusty, he was related to the Osleys and also the Harts, who own Bar H. So it was like a family trio of barbecue. You know, it's healthy competition between all of us. There's one time I had to order for like 80 butts, and I can only fit 40 on here. So Backstreet over in Hartwell, they lent me their cooker. So I ended up cooking 40 of them over there. And then one time my meat grinder broke, so they let me use their meat grinder. You know, just little things like that. We try to help each other out. We know it's small town, small, all these are small family-owned businesses, and we have to get through. This is how we have our income and our livelihood. So, and we all understand that. So.
What are Jenica's plans for the future of Vanna Country Barbecue? Much of her vision for the continued success of her restaurant focuses on her two daughters, Rowan and Toby. While she thinks about opening up a second location or a food truck someday, Jenica is also thinking about her daughters. She wants them to learn how to be successful and independent women and uses the restaurant as a place where they can gain the knowledge and skills for operating their own business, maybe even Vanna Country Barbecue itself.
Here's the one you need to sign. And do you want a copy of your receipt?
Rowan made this today, so you'll have to ask her about that. Rowan's my 9-year-old, my daughter. She's the one that poked her head out here for a minute. I mean, they've been here their whole lives. So I was pregnant with both of them while I was working here, and half the time they spent in the stock room, and they're in their little playpen or in a box. That was their favorite thing. When they were toddlers, they would sit in a box and color, and you go back there and find these boxes, and they'd have all kinds of just drawings and stuff all over it. So for me, it's something for them to have. It's like I said, I've been here for 20 years. How much, you got to quit eventually, but for me, it's something that they can have. It's something, I tell them in 5 more years, or 6 more years, you can have it and joke around with them. But, it gives them a start, and it gives them, something to base their beginning on. Whether they want to do it in a restaurant or not, they still have this, and it teaches them hard work, and it teaches them, where, stuff comes from, where your money comes from, and, a lot of times they'll help me pay the bills. We go through the books together. And I guess the best thing that I love to hear them say is, when somebody asks them what they want to do, Rowan, she'll say, well, I'm going to own my own business, or I don't know what was. Last week it was I'm going to be a doctor, but it's always I'm going to own my own business. I'm not going to work for anybody. I'm going to do my own thing. And the other one was doing that too, but currently she wants to be a singer. So, I've definitely had dreams of a second location, but I also find when you do that, it kind of messes with the first one a little bit, and then you don't really have 100% in one. A food truck is definitely something that I want to look into.
There's a long barbecue tradition in Georgia of cooking slowly over wood coals that goes back hundreds of years from indigenous Americans up to the present. Around 1900, Sheriff John Calloway of Wilkes County slow-cooked pork over wood coals and served it with a vinegar-based sauce and marketed it as the Georgia style of barbecue. Media around the nation widely reported that what Calloway served was authentic Southern barbecue. Georgia stood front and center in that national perception of a Southern barbecue tradition. Today, however, there are many different styles of barbecue served throughout the state. Immigration, modernization, and corresponding food trends have precluded a single Georgia style, but what remains constant is that Georgia barbecue represents community, family, and tradition no matter the style. Those things can be found at Vanna Country Barbecue. Jenica is not only a business owner and pitmaster, but a mother who is teaching her daughters valuable skills and lessons to help them realize their own dreams and loving what they do.